Okay, hello. Welcome back to our Python learning series. I know I wanted to make it a little bit more regular than, what was it, 1 week ago? 1 week ago was the last time we did Python. Anyway, we're gonna keep this thing rolling. Oh, let me see. You know what? We'll think about that next time. For now, we are just going to hop in and get started. So, last time we did the print hello world snippet of code. So now we're going to be working on variables and simple data types. So in this chapter, you'll learn about different kinds of data you can work with in your Python programs. Yes, what really happens when you run hello world. Let's take a closer look at what Python does when you run hello world.python. As it turns out, Python does a fair amount of work even if it runs a simple program. So when you run this code, you should see this. But when you run the file hello world.python ending in .python indicates that the file is Python. Yes, we have garnered as much. Your editor then runs the file through the Python interpreter, which reads through the program and determines what each word in the program means. So when the interpreter sees the word print followed by parentheses, it prints to the screen whatever is inside the parentheses. So that's what I was trying to explain the last time, where you have these two parentheses on the outside of the print function. And so print is the name of the function. This is the call. So well, looks like the door's broken. This is what it is reading. So as you write your programs, your editor highlights different parts of your program in different ways. For example, it recognizes that print is the name of a function and displays that word in one color. In this case, it's orange. It recognized that hello world or hello Python world is not Python code and displays that phrase in a different color. This feature is called syntax highlighting, and it's quite useful as you start writing your own programs. So you'll see this, and even the parentheses are all different colors. That is mainly just for your benefit to tell the difference between your different code. So we're going to get started with the variables. So let's try using a variable in hello world.python, adding a new line at the beginning of the file and modify the second line. So message equals hello Python world, and then you have the print function with a new thing here in the parentheses with message. So you have message here, and then you do it again here. So we're going to do that here. We're going to move this over to a second line, and we're going to say message is equal to quotation hello Python, Python world. Explanation, because you need that. And then we're going to take away everything, and we're going to put message. So now that this is highlighted blue, and you can see it highlighting a different part of the code, you can probably guess what's about to happen here. So this is your first taste of a variable. So a variable in coding is just like in math. This means nothing. This means whatever you tell it, it means. So just the way x could mean 20, -4, 6, it's all the same thing. So when you run this program to see what happens, you should see the exact same output, hello Python world. It shouldn't run any different. So if we go to run without debugging, it just gives us hello Python world. Basic. So that's about the simplest form of a variable as it gets. So we've added a variable named message. Every variable is connected to a value. This is the value right here. And that value is hello Python world. Adding a variable makes a little more work for the Python interpreter. When it processes the first line, it associates the variable message with the hello Python world text. When it reaches the second line, it prints the value associated with message. So because we put the value in here, and you can kind of see, like, just when you hover over the print function, it gives you a bunch of different things you can do with it, right? But in this case, this variable is going to be printing this value. So let's expand on this program by modifying hello Python world to print a second message. Add a blank line to hello Python world and then add 2 new lines of code. So we're going to do it just like how it has it here. We're going to skip a line and we're going to say message is equal, oh, forgot the space, is equal to hello Python crash course world. My fat fingers keep hitting a bunch of other things. And it added the second quotation for me, so I don't have to do that, at least. And then we're going to add a new line that says print message. And so we're going to read on just to hear its explanation of what this is going to do. But if you're confused as to how you can have this same variable have 2 different things and print out 2 different things, it'll be explained. So this will run 2 different lines. Even though it's the same variable, it's gonna read this, print it, and then read this, redefine it, and print it. At least that's the way I remember it. So now when you run hello Python or hello world.python, you should see 2 lines of output. Hello Python world, hello Python crash course world. You can change the value of a variable in your program at any time, and Python will always keep track of its current value. So one thing that it does not touch on right there is that this will be the forever new value. This will forever be what the rest of your code refers to. So once you change the value of a variable, it does not revert back unless you manually have another line somewhere that checks and changes it. So keep that in mind. You don't want to be changing your variables too often unless you have to. So naming and using variables, there is a, I don't know if I'm using this word, nomenclature, like a standard operating procedure for your variables and how to use them and name them. So when you're using variables in Python, you need to adhere to a few rules and guidelines. Breaking some of these rules will cause errors. Other guidelines will just help you write code that's easier to read and understand, which is super underrated because I write terrible code. Code that is not easy to read and understand because I don't know better. Be sure to keep the following rules in mind when working with variables. Variable names can contain only letters, numbers, and underscores. They can start with a letter or an underscore, but not with a number. For instance, you can call a variable message1, but not one message. Spaces are not allowed. Sorry. Just woke up like an hour ago. Spaces are not allowed in variable names, but underscores can be used to separate words in variable names. For example, greeting message works, but greeting message will cause errors. Avoid using Python keywords and function names as variable names. For example, do not use the word print as a variable name. Python has reserved it for a particular programmatic purpose. See Python keywords, blah, 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 blah. Variable name should be short but descriptive. For example, name is better than N, student name is better than SN, and name length is better than length of person's name. So just use your best judgment when coming up with your names. For example, keep it short and sweet and to the point and as descriptive as possible. I know, a little hard for some of us, be careful when using the lowercase letter L and the uppercase letter O because they can be confused with the letter or the numbers 1 and 0. It can take some practice to learn how to create good variable names, especially as your programs become more interesting and complicated. As you write more programs and start to read through other people's code, you'll be getting better at coming up with meaningful names. So, to that end, I'm going to be spending a lot of time coming up with nonsensical variable names because I can't decide. Avoiding name errors when using variables. Every programmer makes mistakes, and most make mistakes every day. Geez, I can't read it either, apparently. Although good programmers might create errors, they also know how to respond to those errors efficiently. Let's look at an error you're likely to make early on and how to fix it. We'll write some code that generates an error on purpose. Enter the following code, including the misspelled word message, which is shown in bold. Dang. Okay. We're going to change all of this up. We're going to say message equals hello Python crash course reader. Okay. And then we're going to change this to Mesage. When an error occurs in your program, the Python interpreter does its best to help you figure out where the problem is. So that's what I was talking about in the callback in the last video. So the interpreter provides a traceback or callback, traceback, same thing. When a program cannot run successfully, a traceback is a record of where the interpreter ran into a problem when trying to execute your code. Here's an example of the traceback that Python provides after you accidentally misspelled a variable's name. So we can test that out right here. All right. So it tells us exactly what we messed up. So it tells us where it is, what code that it ran into the problem, and then it also gives you a quick suggestion of what it thinks you meant to say. So the name Mesage is not defined. Did you mean message? So it knows what we were trying to say. It won't always, but this time it knows. It'll point you to the exact place in your line that gets messed up. So it'll show that exact same output right here, and it'll explain it just a little bit further in detail. The output reports that an error occurs in line 2 of the hello world.python file. The interpreter shows this line to help us spot the error quickly and tells us what kind of error it found. In this case, it found a name error and reports that the variable being printed, Mesage, has not been defined. Python can't identify the variable name provided. A name error only usually means we either forgot to set a variable's value before using it, so sometimes you can have a blank value, and it won't know what to do with that either. If Python finds, value before using it, or we made a spelling mistake when entering the variable's name. If Python finds a variable name that's similar to the one it doesn't recognize, it will ask if that's the name you meant to use, just like it did right here. Did you mean message? In this example, we omitted the letter S in the variable name message. In the second line, I read that weird. The Python interpreter doesn't spell check your code, but it does ensure that variable names are spelled consistently. For example, watch what happens when we spell message incorrectly in the line that defines the variable. So let's do that. Let's change it to what this is. Notice how the colors went back. So now if we run it without debugging, it just spits out the correct function, print. So the variable names match, so Python sees no issue. Programming languages are strict, but they disregard good and bad spelling. As a result, you don't need to consider English spelling and grammar rules when you're trying to create variable names and writing code. Many programming errors are simple, single character typos in one line of program. Think about how frustrating that gets when you're into the hundreds of lines. Like right now, this is 2 lines. This is as simple as it gets. It's not going to be very hard to find where your issue is. It's not going to be hard to figure out what your issue is. But once we start getting into the little bit bigger of projects, not even projects really, it's just problem solving, it's going to get confusing. If you find yourself spending a long time searching for one of these errors, know that you're in good company. Many experienced and talented programmers spend hours hunting down these kinds of tiny errors. Try to laugh about it and move on, knowing it will happen frequently throughout your programming life. That is an understatement. It will happen a lot more than frequently. I can tell you from just doing a quarter of this book, it it is so unbelievably frequent. And maybe that's just my brain. I don't seem to have the best long-term memory. Variables are labels. This is another way to think about it. Variables are often described as boxes that you can store values in. This idea can be helpful the first few times you use a variable, but it isn't an accurate way to describe how variables are represented internally in Python. It's much better to think of variables as labels that you can assign to values. You can also say that a variable references a certain value. This distinction probably won't matter much in your initial programs, but it's worth learning earlier rather than later. At some point, you'll see unexpected behavior from a variable, and an accurate understanding of how variables work will help you identify what's happening in your code. That needs to be stressed more. This paragraph right here, if you can even call it that, is probably the one mindset change you are going to need to implement. You're going to see unexpected behavior from a lot of your code. The thing that is going to pull you through changing what you need to change and fixing whatever the problem is that you don't even know is a problem yet is understanding how code works. It's fine and dandy to be able to Google something really quickly that you don't know, but fundamentally understanding, I think, is just a good mindset to have in everything you do in life. Sometimes you don't have to think about things and you can just do it. That's because you fundamentally understand what's going on. So until you reach that point, it's going to be a struggle, I tell you what. But what this whole section is basically trying to tell you is think of this as just a random object in your room, right? Take a look around your room right now. Look at your computer monitor, your keyboard, your mouse, even turn around you. Maybe there's a cup of water on your desk. Maybe there's, some clothes left on your bed that you haven't folded. Now imagine you have a label printer next to you. You know, those little ones that your teacher used to have. They just type in their little thing and then they'll put your name on your folder, or they would label things around the classroom like, this is a whiteboard, this is a pencil. Really dumb examples that teachers probably would never do, but you know what I mean. Your label printer is this. You are printing something out and sticking it on a random object. It does not matter what that object is. You are just putting a label on it to tell you what it is later. You could put this on your refrigerator door and call it Betsy for all anyone cares. It does not change that this is a refrigerator door. It just changes the name that you gave it. Okay. So the best way to understand new programming concepts is to try using them in your programs. If you get stuck while working on an exercise in this book, try doing something else for a while. If you're still stuck, review the relevant part of that chapter. If you still need help, see the suggestions in Appendix C. I probably should have read a little bit. Oh, crap. How do I go back? I didn't want to do that. Anyway. Oh, is this it? This is the advice it gives you? Look at this. Try it again. Have you tried trying it again? Take a break. Sure. Refer to this book's resources. Searching online. Stack Overflow. Okay. Not as useful as I would have thought. All right. So we're gonna be doing this part right here. So we're gonna make a new file, and then we are going to save it as Python crash course chapter 2 exercise 1. Okay, so simple message: assign a message to a variable and then print that message. So I know we already did it here, but now we're gonna just customize a little bit. So just keep things simple. We're gonna keep the variable name as message, and then as you remembered that we did in the Hello Python world, we're gonna put an equal sign, and that is what is gonna tell Python interpreter that this is a variable, this little equal sign. Don't forget it. I don't know that you can just have it right here. Okay, you can, but I imagine that would make things kind of hard to read. So completing our first code explanation. Cool. So it looks like that works. I don't like the way this looks, so I'm just gonna change it back. This is so much easier for me to read. It's just a little bit spaced out. I like that. And then print that message. So print. Gonna add the parentheses, and we're gonna tell it to print this variable. So now we're gonna save it, run it without debugging. Hello. Okay. Completing our first code. Woohoo! We did it. It pulled from the correct place. PCC2 underscore 1.python, completing our first code. Awesome. Simple messages. So let's make a new file. Oh, look, we can shortcut that. Then we're going to save it as PCC2 underscore 2. Now we're going to save. Simple messages. Assign a message to a variable and print that message. Then change the value of the variable to a new message and print the new message. So, continuing on, we're going to do the exact same thing as the last one. Completing our second code, and then we're going to tell it to print message. And then we're going to come underneath and we're going to redefine it, and we're just going to say completed. And then we're going to, oh, whoops. Okay, look, this would have been an error right here. You see this little explanation? That belongs right there. Without that, to close this off, it will not know that this parentheses is not part of the output you're telling it to do, the value. So we're going to print the variable again, and it should now run 2 lines back to us. Completing our second code, completed. Done. Bingo, bang, bong. So now we are going to be moving on to strings. So because most programs define and gather some sort of data and then do something useful with it, it helps to classify different types of data. The first data type we'll look at is the string. Strings are quite simple at first glance, but you can use them in many different ways. A string is a series of characters. Anything inside quotes is considered a string in Python. And you can use single or double quotes around your strings like this. Double quote, this is a string. Single quote, this is also a string. So now we are learning that these are called strings. So within this variable, we have the string completing our second code. That's how I would read that. I don't know if that's how anyone else reads that, but I assume it is. This flexibility allows you to use quotes and apostrophes within your strings. I told my friend Python is my favorite language. So this will spit out exactly I told my friend with the quotations inside the single quotes. Python is my favorite second language with these quotations, double quotes. The language Python is named after Monty Python, not the snake. One of Python's strengths is its diverse and supportive community. Let's explore some of the ways we can use strings. So, changing case in a string with methods. So now we're moving on from strings on to methods. So one of the simplest tasks you can do with strings is change the case of the words in a string. Look at the following code and try to determine what's happening. Name equals Ada Lovelace, print name.title. So this is something we've never seen before. We know that this is a variable, but this dot title with an empty parentheses is what we would call a method. So save this file as name.py, then run it. You should see this output, Ada Lovelace. But what you'll notice is that that is not what was in the variable. Lowercase Ada Lovelace is, capital Ada Lovelace is not. And notice that only the first letter is in an uppercase. So what this is telling us is that it is only going to be changing the first letter of each thing in the string. So in this example, the variable name refers to the lowercase string Ada Lovelace. The method title appears after the variable in the print call. A method is an action that Python can perform on a piece of data. The dot after the name in name dot title, sorry, that was really weird. The dot after name in name.title tells Python to make the title method act on the variable name. Every method is followed by a set of parentheses because methods often need additional information to do their work. That information is provided inside the parentheses. The title function doesn't need any additional information, so its parentheses are empty. The title method changes each word to title case. So that's what this first letter capitalization is going to be called. Title case, right there. I really hate that this is like this whole. Anyway, it's just a PDF here giving me issues. The title function doesn't need any additional parentheses. Empty title case where each word begins with a capital letter. This is useful because you'll often want to think of a name as a piece of information. For example, you might want your program to recognize that the input values Ada all uppercase and Ada all lowercase as the same name and display all of them as Ada. Several other useful methods are available for dealing with case as well. For example, you can change a string to all uppercase or all lowercase letters like this. Ada Lovelace, print name.upper, print name.lower. And I'm gonna assume you can guess what these mean. This will display the following. Ada Lovelace, that's name.upper. Ada Lovelace, that's name.lower. So it changed it from your normal input to these inputs. The lower method is particularly useful for storing data. You typically won't want to trust the capitalization that your users provide, so you'll convert strings to lowercase before storing them. Then, when you want to display the information, you'll use the case that makes the most sense for each string. So let's say someone is inputting a username, and they have to enter their first and last name before they can create their username, and they just put in their name as all lowercase Ada Lovelace. So you would want to store that, or maybe they have a random capitalization somewhere in there. You would want to convert that all to name.lower, and then on, let's say, their profile page where it displays their name. You don't want to have a random uppercase letter in there somewhere. So you would do name.title and change it to this input when they're viewing their profile. So using variables and also I will have to get up off of this chair in a second to go do my laundry. We don't got a dryer, so it's gonna take a little while. Maybe like 30 minutes or so. I gotta put a new load in, hang up the old ones. You know the drill. Using variables in strings. In some situations, you'll want to use a variable's value inside a string. For example, you might want to use two variables to represent a first name and a last name, respectively, and then combine those values to display someone's full name. So, first name is equal to Ada, last name is equal to Lovelace, full name equals F. This is a new method, or I guess you could call it, or function. It's similar to print. First name, last name, but this time you'll see that we're using brackets, or whatever these squigglies are called. Print full name. So you're telling it to print this, but what you'll see is this. So these are two separate variables. So how would this print it? It should print it one after the other. So to insert a variable's value into a string, place the letter F immediately before the opening quotation mark. Put they're called braces. Put braces around the name or names of any variable you want to use inside the string. So the quotation starts here, right after F, and it will use both of these variables. It will not print with brackets. It will just print whatever's in the variable. Python will replace each variable with its value when the string is displayed. These strings are called F strings. And the F is for format because Python formats a string by replacing the name of any variable in braces with its value. The output from the previous code is Ada Lovelace, just like how I would say. It's not going to have this F, it's not going to have the quotations, it's not going to have the braces. You can do a lot with F strings to the point where it became my primary method of using these print calls. I almost never had any kind of print call without this this format function. It's just so useful to include in everything that I just stuck it everywhere, even places it didn't need to be. Every single line that could use it, I used it. I don't know if that's good or bad. If it's neutral, whatever. You can do a lot with F strings. For example, you can use F strings to compose complete messages using the information associated with a variable as shown here. Ada, Lovelace, hello, comma, full name dot title, parentheses, close braces, explanation. So this formatting is confusing, but because you have this format function right here, I don't know if it is a function or a method, might be a method, it will print out exactly that. So super useful. I use it all the time. The full name is used in a sentence that greets the user, and the title method changes the name to title case. This code returns a simple but nicely formatted greeting. So you could literally have a bunch of different stuff just to mean one thing that you could realistically condense into one singular line. You could just say full name equals quotation Ada Lovelace, and then just do full name dot title, and it would be 2 lines instead of 4. But that's the way that this wrote it out, so that's how the example is. You can also use F strings to compose a message and then assign the entire message to a variable. So you can say within the new variable that the format is hello, and then this entire last thing, but instead of printing it, it then creates a new variable so that anytime you mention this later, so let's say you're calling to this variable right here, message, to create a new string, it'll pull from this instead of this or this, it'll pull this. So you can say print, you can use any other function that you can use this variable for. The code displays the message hello Ada Lovelace as well, but by assigning the message to a variable, we make the final print call much simpler. Indeed, print message is a lot easier to understand than print f hello, comma, braces, full underscore name dot title parentheses braces. So anyone, even if they're not familiar with coding, if they at least understand this much, it'll be a lot easier for them to understand what this is trying to do. Adding white space to strings with tabs or new lines. In programming, white space refers to any non-printing characters such as spaces, tabs, and end-of-line symbols. You can use white space to organize your output so it's easier for users to read. To add a tab to your text, use the character combination /T. I think. Print Python. Oh, okay. So the white space is in what it prints. So this output right here prints exactly Python, and it just puts it to the first character that it can. This one, this /T in front of Python, so instead of the F, this one is /T. This is a tab. It puts out 5 spaces before Python. To add a new line in a string, use the character combination /n. So if you put /n before anything in your print, it will put each thing after the n on its own line. You can also combine tabs and new lines in a single string. The string nt tells Python to move to a new line and to start the next line with a tab. The following example shows how you can use a one-line string to generate 4 lines of output. And to clarify, you probably couldn't put /t/n Python and it do the same thing. So if you put /t and then /n, it's going to put 5 things of space, move down to a new line, and then just put Python on the first line. So it's not going to work that like the same way. It's not like an a plus b equals b plus a. It doesn't work like that. It has to go in order. It's more of a PEMDAS situation. Okay, new lines and tabs will be very useful in the next 2 chapters when you start to produce many lines of output from just a few lines of code. Stripping white space. So you can also strip white space. Let me just see how much more of this we gotta go through. So it looks like we'll at least get to this part. Okay, so I'm gonna go do my laundry. Oh, I'm so sorry. You know what I forgot? I forgot to put music on. I just got like a free trial of the Epidemic Sound. I was gonna put on some lo-fi in the background just because it's good thinking music. Not that we've done a whole lot of our own independent thinking so far. Haven't even really got to any of the real challenges, but let me put something on while I go and do some laundry. Hopefully you guys like that. I'll be right back. Alright, I'm finally back. Hope you guys enjoyed listening to the music. I was gone for like, what, half an hour? Yeah, we went through quite a few songs. Well, we're just gonna leave that going in the background. We're just gonna turn it down just a little bit. Mainly because I can't hear myself think. Okay. So, what were we doing? Cool. Stripping white space. Extra white space can be confusing in your programs to programmers. Python and Python, I don't know if you can tell the difference, but there's a little space here. Pretty much, or look pretty much the same, but to a program, they are two different strings. Python detects the extra space in Python, and it considers it significant unless you tell it otherwise. It's important to think about white space because often you'll want to compare two strings to determine whether they are the same. For example, one important instance might involve checking people's usernames when they log into a website. Extra white space can be confusing in much simpler situations as well. Fortunately, Python makes it easy to eliminate extra white space from data that people enter. Python can look for extra white space on the right and left sides of a string. To ensure that no white space exists at the right side of a string, use right side strip method. At least that's how I read it, rstrip. So right side, left side. Favorite languages equals Python with extra white space. Favorite language is Python. Favorite language.rstrip makes it into regular Python like this. And then favorite language again would just spit out that. So I'm not entirely sure how they decided to split this up for what reason, but I'm sure it'll get explained a little bit more here. The value associated with favorite language 1 contains extra white space at the end of the string. When you ask Python for this value in the terminal session, you can see the space at the end of the value. When the rstrip method acts on the variable favorite language, this extra space is removed. However, it is only removed temporarily. If you ask the value of favorite language again, the string looks the same as it was entered, including the extra white space. To remove the white space from the string permanently, you have to associate the strip value with the variable name. So favorite language equals Python with an extra thing, and then favorite language, you're redefining it, is favorite language.rstrip, and when you ask for favorite language below this line, you get normal Python. If you were to swap these two lines, you would get this Python as your output, and then it would just get stripped. It wouldn't print out anything. To remove the white space from the string, you strip the white space from the right side of the string and then associate this new value with the original variable. Changing a variable's value is done often in programming. This is how a variable's value can be updated as a program is executed on or in response to user input. You can also strip white space from the left side of a string using the lstrip method, or from both sides at once using regular strip method. So gives you a quick little example. Because it's the exact same thing as this, we're not gonna even go over it. In this example, we start with a value that has white space at the beginning and the end. When we then remove the extra space from the right side, from the left side, and from both sides. Experimenting with these stripping functions can help you become familiar with manipulating strings. In the real world, these stripping functions are used most often to clean up user input before it's stored in a program. So, rstrip, lstrip, and regular strip. So it shows you how it does it in each of the different little examples. You can pause or you can pull it up on your own if you want. Read that later. So now we're moving on to prefixes. This is a lot. When working with strings, another common task is to remove a prefix. Consider a URL with the common prefix https://. We want to remove this prefix so we can focus on just the part of the URL that users need to enter into an address bar. here's how to do that. No starch URL equals https://nostarch.com end quotation. So for this part, the remove prefix function, you tell it what you want to remove. So the remove prefix doesn't know that this is a prefix. Whoops. That's annoying. Now we gotta find our place again. Okay, so it doesn't know that this HTTPS part is a prefix. You have to tell it that it is a prefix in here. So once you run the remove prefix method, it will come out as nostarch.com. Enter the name of the variable followed by a dot, then the method remove prefix. Inside the parentheses, enter the prefix you want to remove from the original string. Like the methods for removing whitespace, remove prefix leaves the original string unchanged. If you want to keep the new value of the prefix removed, either reassign it to the original variable or assign it to a new variable. Simple URL equals no starch URL.remove prefix https blah 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 blah. When you see a URL in an address bar and the https part isn't shown, the browser is probably using a method like remove prefix behind the scenes. So I believe this is the last section before we can move on to our examples. So avoiding syntax error with strings. One kind of error that you might see with some regularity is a syntax error. A syntax error occurs when Python doesn't recognize a section of a program as valid Python code. Valid Python code. It might be code, but it might not be valid. For example, if you use an apostrophe within single quotes, you'll produce an error. This happens because Python interprets everything between the first single quote and the apostrophe as a string. It then tries to interpret the rest of the text as Python code, which causes error. Here's how to use single and double quotes correctly. Save this program as apostrophe.py and then run it. We're not going to do that. That's redundant. We're just going to go through this example because it's not very useful to us later on. So message equals one of Python's strengths is its diverse community. So you'll see the apostrophe here, but it is within double quotes. It is not within single quotes. The apostrophe appears inside a set of double quotes, so the Python interpreter has no trouble reading the string correctly. However, if you use single quotes, Python can't identify where the string should end. So message, one of Python's strengths is its diverse community. Now we're using single quotes, and then this is what you would get for that. Unterminated string literal detected at line 1. So it thinks that this isn't a complete string because it has 3 of them. So it thinks that this is starting a new one and is trying to find where the rest of the string is. It just sees the opening of the string, doesn't see a close. So in the interpreter, you can see that the error occurs right after the final single quote. This syntax error indicates that the interpreter doesn't recognize something in the code as valid Python code, and it thinks the problem might be a string that's not quoted correctly. Errors can come from a variety of sources, and I'll point out some common ones as they arise. You might see syntax errors often as you learn to write proper Python code. Syntax errors are also the least specific kind of error, so they can be difficult and frustrating to identify and correct. If you get stuck on a particularly stubborn error, see the suggestion Appendix C. Not very helpful. Your editor's syntax highlighter feature should help you spot some syntax errors quickly as you write your programs. If you see Python code highlighted as if it's English or English highlighted as if it's Python code, you probably have a mismatched quotation mark somewhere in your file. Now, we are finally on to some example programs. So save each of the following exercises as a separate file with a name like name_case.py. If you get stuck, take a break, blah 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 blah. Okay, we're gonna create a new file. And then we're gonna name it. PCC 2_3. Okay. So it says personal message. Use a variable to represent a person's name and print a message to that person. Your message should be simple, such as, "Hello, Eric, would you like to learn some Python today?" So you'll probably see the F function here, or this is probably where you would want to use the F function. That's the first one that we went over. Where is it? Oh, it's not the first one, but it's one of them. So we're going to be using this F format. So we're going to come over here and we're going to give this variable name. And we're going to say, ooh, I can't use that. Name is equal to Kinai. So now it should read this. We're actually going to change that to lowercase. Excuse me. And then we're going to say message is equal to F quotation and then braces, or sorry, we're gonna say hello, comma, space, then braces, name, dot, title, and then open and close parentheses. Actually, we're gonna move this comma. We're to the end of this. How are you today? Oh, I don't know why this is over here. This should be over here. Don't know how that got like that. And then we're gonna come down to the bottom and say print message. So we have done as the prompt has asked us. We've done a little bit different of a message, but basically we have included a variable to represent someone's name right here. That is our name. And then printing that message to someone else. So the message is a variable, name is a variable. We're using it both. So now all we have to do is we're gonna save first, and then we're gonna run. And it spits out hello Kinai. Although it is reading this not as one thing, it is reading this as a separate piece. How do we alleviate this problem? I guess we could just change that. It'd technically be the same thing, but I don't like how it assumes that after this quotation that this is a separate piece. Well, for now, we're gonna change it to this, and then when we run it again, it should lowercase it. Yeah. Hello, Kinai. How are you today? We'll figure out how to add that quotation later, or if any of you guys know how, drop it down in the comment so everyone else can see it. So, name cases. We are going to start a new file. Whoops. Did that wrong. So we are now on example 4. Name cases. Use a variable to represent a person's name and then print that person's name in lowercase, uppercase, and title case. We're gonna make YouTube our last name. So we're gonna go name is equal to Kinai YouTube. And then we're gonna do print name dot title. I believe that was one of the name dot title, and then we're gonna do print, and then we're gonna do the N thing to move it onto a new line, unless that's supposed to be backslash. Was it forward slash or backslash? Let me double check really quick. Okay, so it is forward slash. I was right. Oops. Forward slash N. And then I'm pretty sure that we should just be able to put N on for like new line, and then it'll like push all of it to a new line. But okay, so it needs to be in quotations first. See, you're relearning with me. Slash N, and then we're gonna put in the braces name dot upper. Then we're gonna put some of those in, and we're gonna finish it off with a quotation. Okay, and then we're gonna do a similar one right underneath that. We're gonna do print quotations forward slash N braces name dot lower, although that shouldn't really change anything, and then our parentheses, and that should be it. So we go ahead and save this and then run the code. Should give us 3 separate lines. No. There's no parentheses after this, so let's try and change that. Save it, run it. Name is not defined. Did you mean name? Oh, okay. So here's a good example of a single letter being different. So it's the same thing. I put name for both of these. The only difference is that this is lowercase and this is uppercase, so it's not going to be able to find it. So now if we change that lowercase name like it was supposed to have been, and then we run it. Okay, so this is wrong. So it did the first line correctly, name.title. So let's try and remove the quotations, see if that fixes it. So let's save and then run it again. What if we put a space? No. What if we just don't include braces? Would that change anything? I know this red is usually telling you it's like it's not gonna work. It doesn't have any fixes for me. So we're just gonna save it and run it, see if that changes anything. No. So that's /n. I wonder if I can add this before. So like, let's say I move this out, right? Just like the F. We're gonna try it, oops. Like this. No. I didn't think I would be struggling to get this on a new line for each of these. Well, let's try and save it as is, since this is code that works. And let's just run it and see how it prints that out. Okay, so it's just gonna put it on a new line anyway. So, title case, uppercase, lowercase. Okay, I guess that works. I was making it needlessly complicated for some reason. We're now gonna move on. We're gonna ignore that was just all around dumb, and we're just gonna move on. Famous quote. Find a quote from a famous person you admire. Print the quote and the name of its author. Your output should something like the following. Include the quotation mark. Albert Einstein once said, "A person who never made a mistake never tried anything new." So, what it's asking us is basically for the example 3, just in the form of a quote. So this should realistically be 2 lines of code, maybe. So we're gonna say quote is the name of our variable, and what we're gonna put in, we're gonna look for a quote. I'm gonna do a Rocky quote because I like Rocky quotes. What is this? This is like a weird going in one more round when you don't think you can. That's what makes all the difference in your life. No, maybe I can't win. Maybe the only thing I can do is just take everything he's got. But to beat me, he's going to have to kill me. And to kill me, he's going to have to... Yeah. If I can change, then you can change. Everyone can change. I like this one right there. Now, if you know what you're worth, then go out and get what you're worth. But you got to be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers saying you ain't where you want to be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that, and that ain't you. You're better than that. This is a quote. And what we're going to say is exactly like how they have it in examples is the character, that doesn't need to be capitalized, the character Rocky Balboa once said, and then we're gonna put here, and then we're gonna put, we're gonna change these to single quotes so that we can put the double quotes inside. Once said, and then we're gonna paste, and then we're gonna take out this last part. And then we're gonna change this to our quotes. Thank you, Mr. Bike Rider. Now, there's this line right here. You might be wondering what that is and why it's there. It is to tell you where the end of your line should be. This is about where I think 80 characters is. So all we're gonna do is we're gonna shift this down. I believe if we hit tab, or maybe not, because this is reading it as like a new line of code. So let's just move that back for now. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Then we're just gonna say print quote. We'll save it. Did I not? Oh, I guess I didn't. Save as. Example 5, save, run without debugging. Hint, I wrote hint again. Print. Then we're gonna save, run without debugging. The character Rocky Balboa once said, blah 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 blah. Cool. Got through it. It's like exact. I don't know why they thought this would be a different example from this. It's the exact same thing. It It's literally no different. This is a useless example. Famous quote 2. Repeat exercise 2-5, but this time represent the famous person's quote using a variable called famous person. Then compose your message and represent it with a new variable called message. Print your message. I'm going to need to read that again because that didn't make sense to me. Represent the famous person's name as a variable called famous person. Then compose your message and represent it. Okay. So we're gonna say famous underscore person is equal to Rocky Balboa. And then underneath we're gonna say message is equal to F, and then we are going to say what did we put? The character quotations, the character dash, and then we're gonna put the braces. We're gonna put famous person, and then we're gonna do dot title, because realistically that should be all lowercase. Doesn't really need to be, but it is. And then we're gonna put our little quotation and put the pasted part in. And we're gonna delete up to that. We're gonna have to change that to that. And then we're gonna have to change that to that. So now that should be fixed. Okay. Oops. Gotta go to the end. Start a new line. Print message. And now let's save. Example 2.6. Run it without debugging. F is not defined. Name error. Okay. How would... Oh, the F goes inside. Like that. So now if we save it and then run it. Yeah. Spits it out. The character Rocky Balboa, it printed it in upper, or title case, I mean, and then the quote. All right, let's move on. Let's just save it now, so we don't have to do this later. Stripping names. Use a variable to represent a person's name and include some white space characters at the beginning and end of the name. Make sure you use each character combination /T and N at least once. Print the name once so the white space around the name is displayed. Then print the name using each of the 3 stripping functions. Okay. We're gonna say name is equal to quotations. We're gonna add a space. We're just gonna say Rocky Balboa, then add another space. So when we print, it should come out as just one Rocky Balboa. Yep, one Rocky Balboa. You can see the white space here and the white space here. So now if we come down, and then we tell it to print it. I forgot what the T was. I think that was tab. I don't want it to be tab though. Well, damn. So what if we just do /T? No? Oh, /T. And then what if we save and run that? Invalid syntax. So it accepts it, but it won't work. So what if we put F here and then /T? Yeah. And then braces. Okay, does this need to be in quotations? Let's save it, run it. Okay, yeah, so I guess F needed to be in here, and this needed quotations to get it to do this. So that's gonna be our /T. We're gonna come down to a new line, and then we're gonna do F again, quotations, /N, and then we're gonna do the braces, name, dot, title, and then open, close parentheses. We're gonna do another one, print, F, /N, braces, name, dot, lower. Okay, and we're gonna do it again. Print, F, quotations, /N, braces, name, dot, title. Oh wait, what are we doing? I'm doing the wrong thing. I'm supposed to be removing the white space. Duh. Yeah, I'm supposed to be using L strip, R strip, and then regular strip. Whoops. I'm gonna do R strip, and then L strip, and then regular strip. Whoops, sorry. Then we're gonna save, then we're gonna run without debugging. So gives us all the different ones. This one still has white space here. It's harder to tell if there's white space or not at the end of it, but yeah. Okay. File extensions. Python has remove suffix method that works exactly like remove prefix. Assign the value python _ notes.text to a variable called file name. Then use the remove suffix method to display the file name without the file extension like some file browsers do. Alright, let's do it. Alright, PCC 2_8. Okay, so it said to create a variable name file name is equal to, and then we're going to say python _notes.txt, right? Python notes.txt, yeah. And then we're going to use the remove suffix method to display the file name without the file extension. So we're going to do print file name dot remove suffix pretty sure that's it. When I save and run without debugging, let's add braces. Still wrong. Oh, you know why? Because I'm an idiot. Dot text. Okay, let's remove that. And let's remove that. I don't think I put that text. Now we gotta save because it doesn't store anything. You have to tell it what to take out. Okay. It new. That goes there. Now let's run it. Python notes. No.txt. We did it. Alright. So I gotta do laundry again, but unfortunately we will not be continuing the rest of the chapter. So it looks like we got a handful of examples left. Looks like we got about 4. So we're just gonna continue off of numbers in the next video when we finally get there. Hope you guys found this useful. Sorry for the half an hour downtime in the middle of this stream, but you gotta take care of what you gotta take care of. See you guys in the next Python stream, or if you guys want, you can always stop by for my gaming stream. Aloha.